The Scott Jennings Show is proudly sponsored by Lear Capital. Since 1997, Lear has helped Americans protect their retirement accounts and savings with physical gold and silver. With thousands of five-star reviews and $3 billion in transactions, Lear is who I trust to help me buy gold and silver. Visit LearScott.com.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Today, major developments in the war. 2 top Iranian officials are dead in overnight airstrikes. We have the details. Plus, we have some new sound from Secretary of State Marco Rubio on the overall war effort. Vice President Vance tackling fraud in America. And why did Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear veto an education bill? We'll explore this hour. It is Tuesday, March the 17th. This is Scott Jennings reporting for Salem. We are live on the campus of Arizona State University today. We want to thank the folks here at the Zoom Innovation Lab inside the Creativity Commons here in the heart of ASU. Terrific staff here, and we are all set up and ready to perform common sense for the American people. We have a great lineup on the show today. My CNN colleague, my friend, David Axelrod, will come along in the second hour to talk politics. And we have TV reporter Nick Minnick here later this hour to talk about the sanctuary policies that are terrorizing people in Northern Virginia. But let's start with the news. While you slept, Israel says it carried out a precision strike inside of Iran, killing 2 senior figures, Ali Larijani, who is the top national security strategist, and General Gol Reza Soleimani, who is a commander of a paramilitary force that helps enforce regime control. Israeli officials say the operation was based on high-level intelligence, and it is a deliberate targeting of Iran's leadership structure. Here is the Israeli Foreign Minister, Gideon Sa'ar, in cut number 9.
Larijani was also under U.S. sanctions for the same reason, with a $10 million prize on his head. We did it for free. Anyhow.
This is part of a broader pattern in this war, Operation Epic Fury, and Israel is now increasingly focusing not just on military assets, but on people who plan and sustain the regime's power. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio made some comments on the war effort last night on Fox News. Imminent threat? You bet, Rubio says in cut number 6.
Ultimately, all radical Islamic movements in the world identify the West writ large, but the United States in particular, as the greatest evil on the earth. And every chance to have the notion that somehow radical Islam would be comfortable with simply controlling some province in Iraq or Syria is just not borne out by history. Radical Islam has shown that their desire is not simply to occupy one part of the world and be happy with their own little caliphate. They want to expand. It's revolutionary in its nature. It seeks to expand and control more territories and more people. And radical Islam has designs openly on the West, on the United States, on Europe. We've seen that progress there as well. And they are prepared to conduct acts of terrorism. In the case of Iran, nation-state actions, assassinations, murders, you name it, whatever it takes for them to gain their influence and ultimately their domination of different cultures and societies. That's a clear and imminent threat to the world and to the broader West.
Marco Rubio talking last night about the war. Now, we're still watching the Strait of Hormuz situation. Germany and Italy have completely ruled out taking any military action to reopen passage through the strait. Britain and France agreed to conditional involvement. President Trump talked a little bit about France yesterday, and it's President Macron. Let's hear that in cut number 7.
Have you been speaking with the French President Macron about the coalition to reopen the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, I have spoken to him. He's been on a scale of 0 to 10. I'd say he's been an 8. Not perfect, but it's France. We don't expect perfect.
Are you confident that France will help with the reopening of Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I think he's going to help. I mean, I'll let you know. I spoke to him yesterday.
Coming up later in the show, we look at whether the war effort has affected the president's political standing, his polling inside the Republican Party. Now, closer to home, communist Cuba is laboring under the strain of American pressure and internal turmoil. Overnight, the country's fragile power grid collapsed again, leaving millions without electricity. This is part of a deepening crisis. They have fuel shortages, an aging system, and a failing economy. It's led to rolling blackouts, food shortages, and growing unrest among the Cuban people. Now we are seeing rare public protests as Cubans take to the streets demanding relief. And here's the broader goal from the Trump administration: to put maximum pressure on the regime and force real change on the island. They want political freedom, economic reform, and ultimately a government that answers to the Cuban people, not the other way around. Bottom line, what you're seeing in the news isn't just about blackouts. This is a regime that is under strain, and the pressure is building. Rubio said today, in comments he made in the White House, that the current Cuban government is unable to fix the island's struggling economy and that it, quote, needs new people in charge to repair it. Back in the White House, and yesterday, Vice President Vance appeared alongside the president for the signing of an executive order to set up Trump's anti-fraud task force. This promise was made in the State of the Union. Here's Vance in cut number 12.
This is one of the reasons why DOJ is such an important part of this, is because we have to make sure that where we see criminal conduct, we actually prosecute it. And the president's talked about this a lot in the past. I don't need to repeat it, but it's worth noting that so many times when we find people engaged in really, really bad conduct, you know, the local judge or the local grand jury tries to stop it. One of the cool things about what we're doing is we're trying to take some innovative steps to ensure that when we find criminal fraud, we can actually prosecute it all the way to the end.
As they say back home, Vance will have more than he can say grace over with this anti-fraud assignment. Now, the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, says there's hundreds of billions, maybe $1 trillion in fraud out there. Comes right out of your pocket. Pakistan and Afghanistan are fighting, by the way, 3 weeks now in a border conflict between the two countries, and it shows no signs of slowing down. On Tuesday, the Taliban, now remember, they run Afghanistan now. They said at least 400 people had been killed and 200 injured after Pakistan struck a drug rehab center with an airstrike in Kabul, the deadliest strike yet in this escalating situation. Back in the U.S., meat packers have gone on strike in Colorado. It's the first time that's happened in 40 years. Thousands of workers at a major JBS meat packing plant in Greeley, Colorado, walked off the job after contract talks broke down. Now, this particular plant handles a significant share of America's beef supply, so the strike could tighten production and push already high meat prices even higher. You're listening to Common Sense for the American People. This is Scott Jennings on Salem. We do have this just in to the Scott Jennings Show. President Trump taking questions from reporters this morning in the Oval Office, and the president actually just made some comments about the airstrikes overnight that took out two of the Iranian regime's top national security figures. Let's listen to the president now in cut number 16.
The top person was, they say, a lot of people say their actual top was killed yesterday, along with somebody else who was responsible for the killing, the man that was responsible for the killing of 32,000 people over the last 2 weeks. He was in charge of the killing of protesters. It's an evil group. I mean, they've killed much more than 32,000 people. And the man who was responsible for that was also killed yesterday.
That was the president in the Oval Office just a little while ago. We're going to keep an eye on the president's commentary this morning and bring you any breaking news from that. Let's get a little news on aches and pains. I want to talk to you about Relief Factor. You know, I've talked to you all for months now about Relief Factor. We have experienced it in the Jennings household, and the experience has been good. We're getting all kinds of cards and letters and information from customers around the country who say they tried Relief Factor and found it to be more than satisfactory. Well, their levels of happiness are about to go up because Relief Factor has now improved the formula of the product. They have added a black pepper extract to this premium product. It helps your body absorb the nutrients and the key ingredients more efficiently. In simple terms, your body will get a greater benefit from what you're already taking, and that really matters. If you're going to take something daily, you'd like to know that your body is absorbing it as best it can. This new formula will make that possible. If you have been listening to me talk about Relief Factor for a while, maybe today is your moment. Or if you're already taking it, you now are getting an enhanced formula. It will work even smarter than it was already. My advice, start with Relief Factor's 3-week quick start plan. You'll get a 3-week supply. It costs $19.95. You have very little to lose here, but a lot to gain if it relieves your aches and pains. Here's how you do it. You go to relieffactor.com or you call 1-800-4RELIEF. Again, relieffactor.com or 1-800-4RELIEF. 3-week quick start of Relief Factor could be the answer for you. When we come back, we talk education policy in Kentucky. A governor there named Andy Beshear, who wants to run for president, has vetoed a bill. We'll find out why right after this on The Scott Jennings Show.
Hey, it's Scott, and I'm so excited to welcome Crowd Health as a new partner to The Scott Jennings Show. For several years, I'm hearing more people voicing frustration with traditional health insurance. Bad incentives baked into Obamacare have sent costs soaring. The rules are a maze of jargon, and people feel stuck. That's why I want to tell you about my new partner, Crowd Health. Crowd Health isn't insurance. It's a community that cuts out the middleman to help one another fund medical expenses, giving you more freedom, fewer surprises, and greater control over your healthcare choices. And when it comes to cost, members are spending hundreds less per month compared to traditional insurance. Right now, you can get started for just $99 per month for your first 3 months when you use the code SCOTT. Go to joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com and use code SCOTT. Again, joincrowdhealth.com, code SCOTT. Quick reminder, Crowd Health is not insurance. You can opt out, take your power back, and that is how we win.
You want to drive a leftist crazy? Tell the truth and keep smiling. This is The Scott Jennings Show.
Tuesday, March the 17th. Common sense for the American people. Thanks for joining us here on Salem. You know, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear is often talked about as a moderate Democrat with national ambitions, but his latest move in Kentucky is raising some eyebrows. On Friday, he vetoed a bill that would have opted Kentucky into a federal tax credit scholarship program that would bring more education dollars into the state without taking any money away from public schools. In his veto message, Beshear argued the focus should be on funding public education, not expanding alternatives. But critics say that misses the point, since the program is funded through federal tax credits and would support things like tutoring and scholarships for Kentucky students. What does this tell us about Andy Beshear's political positioning and about the broader fight over school choice? Here to discuss the program that did come from the big, beautiful bill and the myths about it being pushed by Beshear is Brian Jodis. He's the National Press Secretary for the American Federation for Children. Brian, welcome into the Scott Jennings Show. You saw Beshear's veto message. Let's start here. Is the Kentucky legislature poised to override this veto and get Kentucky opted in to Trump's tax credit plan here?
Yeah, Scott, good to be with you, and it's a great question. We saw the Kentucky House take action yesterday on Monday to override that veto. The Senate stands poised to do the same. They're back in session within the hour here this afternoon, and so hopefully they'll come through here and step in and step up and do what's right for Kentucky families, parents, taxpayers as well. I mean, this really is a no-brainer to get your state on board for this.
Let's just dispel one of the myths that Andy Beshear tells about the tax credit program. He says this hurts public schools, that it takes money away from public schools. This is a canard he has thrown out for years when battling against school choice in Kentucky. For the record, does this tax credit program take any money away from public schools? Any tax money? Right. Does it leave public schools at all, for the record?
You know, sometimes you hear these statements. I kind of want to do a Scott Jennings patented sort of look to camera here, as you're so apt to do when I see you on CNN. No, of course not. What we're talking about is donor-driven support, philanthropic support, taxpayers donating to scholarship granting organizations in states that choose to opt in. Those resources then go towards kids in private school, but in traditional public school as well. So it really can help kids across makes and models. So this idea that it diverts funds away or it takes public dollars away, it just isn't true. You're talking about private donors giving resources to help kids, ideally in their home state. And that's what you've got the opportunity to see happen, not just in Kentucky, but in states across the country. 27 have opted in this point, including Governor Beshear's colleague, Democrat Governor Jared Polis in Colorado, who opted Colorado in for this as well. So it really is the right thing. And it's in line with what the vast majority of Americans want.
Brian, why do you think Democrats like Andy Beshear are so comfortable lying to the American people and to the people of Kentucky about programs like this? Are they that beholden to teachers' unions that they feel like they would rather lie to their constituents than stand up to teachers' unions?
Like it. Yeah, it's a great question, Scott. It certainly feels like him. I think the Wall Street Journal kind of nailed it with this headline this week. Beshear bows to the teachers' unions. I mean, they're singing from the same sheet of music here across the board. Anytime you hear, backdoor voucher schemes or diverting public money away, you know where that comes from, right? It's right off of the talking points memo that must be circulated from the teachers' unions. They have such a grip. I mean, you're up against what is essentially $3 billion a year being funneled through the collective big schooling teachers union. So look, it's a lot to combat, but when the truth comes to light and people can see the way this program is actually built, how it intends to work, you can see through that. So maybe we could just try to dial the rhetoric back a little bit and look to the way in which these SGOs can serve kids across different makes and models. I mean, we talked about it. Yes, they can help kids with private school tuition, but they can also help with things like tutoring, technology services, can hone in and help kids with special needs. So it really is a great opportunity. But look, the unions have such a stranglehold on some of these politicians. It's hard to get them to focus on what the truth is. That's why we've got to continue to share it here like you're doing.
Yeah, we have about 30 seconds here. I mean, the issue is really about choices and opportunities and options. And Democrats like Andy Beshear think the only option is to let the teachers' unions and the union bosses run your kids' school into the ground. Republicans and conservatives, and even a few Democrats say, no, we need more options for kids who have different kinds of needs for learning environments and so on and so forth. It is an interesting debate that is unfolding. I actually interviewed Rahm Emanuel on this show yesterday. He was out pushing the Mississippi Miracle, the Mississippi model, and saying states need to adopt this. I asked him point blank, are you going to be able to stand up to the teachers' unions? He indicated that he might be tough enough to do so, but it doesn't sound like Andy Beshear is that way. Brian Jodis is the National Press Secretary for the American Federation for Children. Brian, quickly, where do we find you on the internet?
Yeah, federationforchildren.org, or go to federalscholarships.com. You can see a lot more about the Educational Freedom Tax Credit.
Thanks a lot, Brian. It's the Scott Jennings Show on Salem. When we come back, we talk to the spokesperson for the Israeli police on the ground in Israel about what's happening under the rocket attacks. Stay with us.
Gold and silver recently soared to record highs and then pulled back. So are precious metals still a good buy? Many Wall Street experts predict higher prices ahead. Why? Well, because we still have trillions in national debt, a declining dollar, and inflation that keeps shrinking our savings. Even with corrections along the way, gold remains a historical hedge for wealth protection. That's why Morgan Stanley's chief investment officer ditched the 60-40 stocks and bonds portfolio and is recommending up to 20% in precious metals. They're getting educated, and you should too. Call Lear Capital at 1-800-880-2424 for your free gold investment kit and learn how you could qualify for up to $20,000 in bonus gold. Lear Capital has over $3 billion in transactions and thousands of five-star reviews. Call 1-800-880-2424, 1-800-880-2424, or visit learscott.com.
The man who made CNN safe for conservatives again. Here's Scott Jennings.
All right, it's Tuesday, March 17th. We are broadcasting today live from the campus of Arizona State University. And amazing staff here, by the way, really helping us get the show. When we're on location, you got to set this thing up. It's not as, I know we make it look easy, but behind the scenes, we're like a duck. On top of the surface, very smooth. Below the surface, a lot of paddling, a lot of chaos, but the folks here at Arizona State have made it easy for us today, so we're grateful for their hospitality. By the way, I do need to continue to counsel you on an issue. You need a vacation, a literal, legit vacation. And I have calculated that you need it in roughly November. And fortunately for you, I have the answer to this need. It's called the Gulf of America Cruise, November of 2026. They tell me, by the way, that people who take cruises in the fall make those decisions about right now. So listen to me. If you're thinking about taking a cruise, I've got the greatest idea. Mike Gallagher is going. I'm going. I think we're adding some other special guests. And we're going on a luxury cruise ship. We're going in the Gulf of America. We're going to celebrate America's 250th anniversary. There's going to be a whole bunch of people there who are like-minded about the world, about political values. We're going to have great conversations about everything going on. And by the way, this will be right after the November election, so we'll have a lot to unpack. But we're going to take this ship out. We're going to see the turquoise waters. We're going to step foot on the white sand beaches. We'll eat great food, and we'll have all these great conversations. Here is how you book this trip. And this is the only way you can book the trip. You got to text the word cruise to 94878. Or you have to visit scottjenningsshow.com, and you have to click on the Gulf of America Cruise banner. Those are the portals. That's how you do it. You can't backdoor this thing. You can't find another way. If you get on this ship in a way other than this, they won't let you into the stuff that Gallagher and I and the other special guests are doing. Text the word cruise to 94878. You'll get signed up for the Gulf of America Cruise. We'll have an amazing time as we sail around the Gulf of America. So, I hope you do it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think these things are, you get some people together, you meet new people, and we'll have a great experience. It's the Scott Jennings Show here on Salem. We are hoping, by the way, to get a live report from inside of Israel. We are trying to get on the line the spokesperson for the Israeli National Police Force. His name is Dean Elsdon. And we're trying to get him on right now. It's always, when you're doing international guests, always a little bit of a technical back and forth, but we want to talk a little bit about what it's like to live in that country right now and to police a country that is under constant rocket fire. We do have some new audio coming in on other news to the Scott Jennings Show. As you know, the Department of Homeland Security remains closed today. Democrats have continued to vote to keep this closed. It's been closed for over a month. If you've been to an American airport in the last couple of weeks, you know they are starting to feel the effects. I personally stood in long lines at a couple of airports. I know other people that have stood in lines. In fact, I was at LaGuardia Airport in New York the other day, and I stood in a line, the security line, stretched all the way back to the parking garage. Now, to the credit of the TSA that was there, they got the line moving, and it was moving along. But I'd never seen a line stretched back that far. We're hearing these kinds of reports increasingly every day because the Department of Homeland Security is closed. The TSA agents, by the way, have now missed 2 paychecks. The other thing going on in America, of course, is that we're under threat of terrorism. We've had numerous terrorist attacks in the United States in the last few weeks. Seems like a dumb time to have the Department of Homeland Security closed, but that's what Democrats have decided to do. Let's listen to the Speaker of the House commenting on this situation today. Magic Mike Johnson says that with this terrorism going on, it's unconscionable for Democrats to keep DHS closed. It's cut number 15.
All of which originated from perpetrators who are already inside the country. Every one of those attacks falls squarely under the purview of the Department of Homeland Security, and the Democrats don't want to fund it. And now they're demanding we strip funding from the very agency responsible for stopping all of that. It's another dangerous game, a political game by Democrats that's as foolish as it is perilous.
Yeah, there's really no good reason to keep this closed. The stated reason for the jockeying here is that Democrats would like to have some changes in ICE immigration enforcement policy. Of course, some changes have already happened. Kristi Noem has resigned, and some other things have happened. In fact, Mark Wayne Mullen I believe this week will be up on the Hill for his confirmation hearings. But ICE is funded until 2029, so keeping the Department of Homeland Security closed right now does nothing about current ICE funding. But as I said, you're going to see everyday impacts of this increasing. Let's listen to the TSA Deputy Administrator. This is a federal official named Adam Stahl. Not only are you going to see increasingly long lines at American airports, but it may get worse, much, much worse. Let's listen to him in cut number 14.
We're doing absolutely everything we can. We have a national deployment office force, and we've fully depleted that. So at this point, we're fully stretched, and so frankly, there's not much else we can do. As the weeks continue, if this continues, it's not hyperbole to suggest that we may have to quite literally shut down airports, particularly smaller ones, if call-out rates go up and we can't, a lot of these officers can't afford to come in. I talked to one officer this week. She's a single mother, and she has a special needs child, and she can't afford to pay for her special needs child care. So again, I believe it's frankly unconscionable that we have Senate Democrats that are playing, they're holding our folks' financial livelihood hostage over political games, political partisanship. So we really need to get back to normal order.
So instead of just having long lines, we are now looking at the possibility of American airports that may be closing. I'm looking at a breaking report just coming in here from CNN. It looks like they are at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. That's in Atlanta. And the reporter says the tears have been flowing from all sorts of people. The chaos is described as worse than even Thanksgiving or Christmas. So a lot of chaos at the airports right now, thanks to the DHS shutdown. Another situation that is breaking today, there is a White House official that is resigning his position today. His name is Joe Kent. Joe Kent was in the office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI. This is Tulsi Gabbard's office in the White House. And he was director of the National Counterterrorism Center. And he has sent a letter to the president, or I guess issued a letter to the public, resigning his position today. He says that he cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. He rants about it. He complains about Israel. He then makes a swipe at Israel and claims that they are the reason we got into the Iraq war back in the Bush years. Of course, that is a well-known and debunked myth. Israel actually warned the United States not to attack Iraq. The United States did it anyway. But you have this man from Washington State, originally named Joe Kent. He is described, by the way, by Taylor Budowich. Taylor was deputy chief of staff in the Trump White House, communications advisor. He left a few weeks ago. But upon getting this public letter from Joe Kent, Taylor Budowich said, and I quote, "Joe Kent is a crazed egomaniac who was often at the center of national security leaks while rarely or never producing any actual work. He spent all of his time working to subvert the chain of command and undermine the President of the United States. This isn't some principled resignation. He just wanted to make a splash before getting canned. What a loser." Now, here's what I think. Number one, I agree that if someone was leaking, not producing any work, and subverting the chain of command from inside the White House, they definitely deserve to be fired. Why wasn't this person already fired? If we knew about that for weeks or months, why wasn't the person already relieved of duty? That's number one. Number two, I wonder why Joe Kent was hired in the first place. He's not known necessarily as someone that would have been additive, I think, to the president's national security team. Now, there's a lot of information about Joe Kent out here that he was months ago cut out of important meetings. He was not part of any Iran war planning. So you had someone here that you already didn't trust, that had already been cut out of serious issues, with a big title, Director of the National Counterterrorism Center, but yet still got to go to the White House every day and do his job. And so while I generally think the pushback on Joe Kent here is probably true, It does make me wonder, why did they hire Joe Kent in the first place, and why was he left in his position for so long? I'll read you a report from Jackie Heinrich, who is a White House reporter with Fox News. She says a senior administration official says Joe Kent was a known leaker and was cut out of the president's intelligence briefings months ago. So you have the person who holding the title of director of the Counterterrorism Center who has been barred from going to intelligence briefings. Doesn't seem great. Heinrich says that the senior administration official says Kent has not been part of any Iran planning discussions or briefings at all. This official, and this is interesting, also said that the White House told Tulsi Gabbard that Joe Kent should be fired for suspected leaks, but that she never did it. So a picture is emerging here of someone who was given a job that they probably should have never had, who immediately went to work in that job, subverting the chain of command, meaning subverting the elected commander-in-chief of the United States, who was leaking to the press, who was cut out of any serious decision-making in meetings, yet was still there and able to resign and try to embarrass the president with this public resignation on the way out the door. You should remember, by the way, Joe Kent ran for Congress in Washington State. He actually won a Republican primary and then turned a red seat over to the Democratic Party a couple of cycles ago before getting this opportunity from Donald Trump. So if you're keeping track on your Republican scorecard for Joe Kent, it's turn a seat over to the Democrats, get a second chance by getting appointed by the president to something important, then try to embarrass Donald Trump with your anti-Israel conspiracy theories on the way out the door. This is really a sad and troubling situation, but even though he has been attacked, actually, in the Democratic mainstream media in the past, I'm sure he'll now be treated as a voice of conscience, a voice of reason, even though they whooped up on him pretty good not all that long ago. Scott Jennings broadcasting to you today from Phoenix, Arizona. Tempe, I guess. We're technically in Tempe, Arizona, from the campus of Arizona State University. And I have a word to you about your wireless service coming from our friends at Patriot Mobile. We're in America's 250th anniversary. The direction of our country, our culture, and our economy is being decided right now. And you want companies like Patriot Mobile in on this decision because they stand with you. They share your values. 12 years they've been in business, delivering premium service and investing in the things that you care about. Switching is not a hassle. You keep your number, you keep your phone, you can upgrade it, whatever. It takes minutes to get switched over. And Patriot Mobile will even do a contract buyout if you're paying off a device. Great company, great service, great deal right now. PatriotMobile.com is how you get in on this. /Scott, PatriotMobile.com/Scott, or call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code Scott. Get a free month of service. We're going to take a break. When we come back, talk about the crazy sanctuary policies in Northern Virginia. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
Freedom to speak clearly with no leftist lunacy. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Rounding out the first hour, we ask a simple question today. What in the world is going on in Fairfax County in Northern Virginia? The Board of Supervisors there created a trust policy that bars any relationship between police and ICE. The Commonwealth's attorney, Steve Descano, is consistently letting illegal criminal aliens out of jail. The sheriff, Stacey Kincaid, is refusing to work with ICE, and she's letting repeat offenders out day after day. The governor, Spanberger, has stopped all cooperation with ICE. And the stories are awful. 41-year-old Stephanie Minter stabbed to death at a bus stop in late February. And this week, an illegal immigrant adult male released into the country under the Biden administration is now in a high school and is accused of groping several female students there. Joining us to discuss all of this is the reporter who is breaking these stories, and on top of it all, his name is Nick Minnick, reporter for WJLA, 7 News DC. This is the ABC affiliate in Washington. Nick, you're on top of this. A lot of people are hearing about this stuff in Fairfax County for the first time, thanks to you. So answer the question. What in the world is going on in Fairfax County in Northern Virginia?
Well, Scott, it's great to be with you. It's definitely more than a full-time job covering what's happening in Fairfax County. You see so many victims who are either dying or being harmed by illegal immigrants who are released time after time into the community in Fairfax County. They're losing their lives. They're being harmed. And this is the consequence that we see of a lot of policies at the local level. Last time I checked, the Center for Immigration Studies had Fairfax County listed in the top 3 counties nationwide that does not honor ICE detainers. And that's a policy Sheriff Stacey Kincaid has right now. She will not honor ICE detainers. And we hear these stories from ICE a lot where they lodge detainers, the sheriff won't comply, and she says ICE has to get a judicial warrant in order to do that. And the governor, Abigail Spanberger, agrees that ICE should get a judicial warrant. But what is that? So when we looked into it, basically what we found is the governor and the sheriff are asking ICE to get something that essentially does not exist. ICE can't go to a local judge and get a judicial warrant. Even if they went to a federal court or a federal judge, they can't get it either because a lot of these things are state charges. You mentioned Stephanie Minter. Her alleged killer is in the country illegally, and that's a state charge, second-degree murder. So it's not like ICE can go to a federal court and get a warrant for something like that. So that's what we're seeing right now in Fairfax County. And I spoke to Stephanie's mother, Cheryl, and 2 of her brothers, Stephanie's brothers, and they're just heartbroken, and they feel like Fairfax County let them down and completely failed their family and failed Stephanie.
Tell me about the issue at the high school. There is an illegal alien who is 19 years old, but is somehow a student in the high school, and you have all these girls coming forward claiming they were groped. What happened there? How is he in the high school, and what are the details?
Yeah, so early last week, a bunch of mothers and fathers reached out to me, and they said, we've been watching you on 7 News for a while, and we just want to let you know what's happening at our school, Fairfax High School. And they told me that this man, student at Fairfax High School, he's almost 19 years old, has been groping their daughters, more than a dozen girls, all school year. And they demanded that the principal send out an email. And so 2 weeks after this was reported to police, and a week after the man was arrested, the principal finally sent out an email saying there was buttocks touching. So if you were a parent and you read this email from the principal, you'd think, oh, maybe it wasn't a big deal. But then, sitting in court, you heard the prosecutor talk about how graphic the touching was, where he would go behind the girls in the hallway at school as they were walking to class. He would put his hand in between their legs, starting from the front and go into the back. And so these girls are just traumatized. The man is now facing 9 counts of assault and battery, which are misdemeanor, simple assault. He might get a slap on the wrist here. The parents want to see him charged with sexual assault, which are felonies. And this man, Israel Flores Ortez, entered the country illegally at the southern border unaccompanied when he was 17 years old. And the Biden administration released him back into the U.S. He somehow made his way up to Fairfax County, where FCPS, the school system, they're opening their arms to folks like this all the time.
Right.
They're happy to have them.
Right. Yeah, this is a troubling situation. We'll have to see how the criminal justice system there treats him, but I've got to be honest, based on your reporting, I don't have high hopes that the parents or the girls who've been molested are going to get much justice here. Nick Minnick, I would encourage, by the way, everyone, follow Nick Minnick, M-I-N-O-C-K, reporter for WJLA, if you want to hear more about this. Another hour ahead. Stay with us. Scott Jennings on Salem. Okay, it's Tuesday, March the 17th. Scott Jennings here on Salem. Thanks for joining us. Hour number 2 is underway, and we give you a quick check of the headlines. Tonight, Team USA goes for the win against Venezuela in the World Baseball Classic, 8 o'clock. Great tournament so far. I encourage you to check that out. We have a major legal fight unfolding in Las Vegas between police and the courts over whether a repeat offender should be released out into the public. A judge out there ordered a 36-year-old suspect with 35 prior arrests to be released on $25,000 bail with an ankle monitor. It's essentially house arrest. But the Las Vegas Metro Police refused. They said the man is too dangerous, citing his history of skipping court and violating past monitoring rules. The judge threatened the cops with contempt, and the sheriff took umbrage with that, and he is now heading to the Nevada Supreme Court, saying releasing this man could violate their sworn duty to protect public safety. The bigger issue here, though, is interesting. The case could decide who has the final say. Is it judges ordering release or police deciding who is too risky for electronic monitoring? Bottom line here in Vegas, it is a high-stakes clash over crime, authority, and public safety, and it is now headed to that state's high court. We'll keep an eye on that story. Finally, the DHS shutdown continues. We're in day 30, 31, I guess now. Airports are getting crazy. There are reports that airports may have to close in some cases due to TSA staffing shortages. And this shutdown at the Department of Homeland Security has Americans worried about the terrorism threats that exist inside of our borders. Many of us are wondering, how do some of these people that we've seen in the news lately get into our country? How do they become naturalized citizens? Are we vetting any of these people? Gene Hamilton joins us now. He is the co-founder and president of America First Legal. He most recently served as deputy White House counsel to President Trump. He also spent time at the Department of Justice and DHS working on immigration policy. Gene, welcome into the Scott Jennings Show. You worked closely with President Trump on many immigration issues over the years. When you hear these stories about some of these people who have committed violence inside of our country recently, they got here, were part of our immigration system, now DHS is shut down, and you hear about the possible terrorism impacts. What is going through your mind? Isn't all of this predictable? If you let people in, you don't vet them, and then you close DHS? Is this what we get from a government and democratic policies that are failing the American people?
It's exactly what you get. It's the complete opposite of common sense. Common sense would dictate to any American that you would only allow people into the country that you can adequately vet and screen, determine that they're not going to pose a threat to security, to safety, that you're going to know that they're going to pay their taxes. You're going to know all of these different things. And for the longest time, decades upon decades, people refused, they failed to ensure that everything was actually as it should be when it comes to vetting and screening. Donald Trump was the first president in the United States to be able to impose the right kinds of vetting and screening, to use leverage that the United States government has to extract information from other governments, to get information that we need to be able to determine, should this person be allowed to come in to be amongst the American people, to be amongst our men, women, and children in communities all across the United States, or is it a chance that maybe, just maybe, they might eventually turn into a terrorist? Maybe, just maybe, eventually they might commit a crime. And so what we have now is that Donald Trump has taken steps in his first administration and certainly in his second administration to address vetting and screening, to ensure that the people that we let in to this country to join our American family are vetted and screened to the maximum degree possible. Otherwise, they don't come in. Previously, that wasn't done. It wasn't done that way. The borders, as everyone knows, were open for years under the Biden administration, in particular, Obama as well. And we are going to see more and more and more of these things over time, of these types of attacks, crimes, and et cetera, unless we let ICE do its job.
Gene, we had a couple of stories last week, terrible, tragic stories. In Michigan, we had someone whose brother was a Hezbollah commander in Lebanon, but he, the attacker, was a naturalized citizen in the United States, drove a truck into a synagogue trying to kill 140 preschool kids that were there. And then down at Old Dominion University, we had a guy from Sierra Leone who had become a naturalized citizen, was part of the National Guard. Then he was convicted of trying to help ISIS. Then he goes to prison. Then he gets out of prison on early release and is just out walking around the community. He winds up killing a retired military officer and an ROTC guy at Old Dominion University, injuring two others. He is then subdued by the ROTC students on campus. In both cases, you have people in the country. In one case, strong ties to Hezbollah. In another case, someone who told a judge, I wanted to help ISIS and I'd like to have an attack like the one at Fort Hood. And yet, they're out in the American public. I recognize the vetting and screening processes have changed now. Are we overdue for a complete and total review of every single person with any kind of status is here with one simple question? Does this person pose a threat to the American public?
I think that we are overdue. I know that a number of things are in the works right now as we speak. The Trump administration certainly made a commitment to engaging in what's known as recurrent vetting. And so that's to continually assess people against law enforcement and intelligence databases to determine whether or not new information has come to light. Because look, as we all know, things change over time. And so what we might not have known about somebody from some database or the lack thereof a few years ago, suddenly information comes into our possession. And if we find out that they have a close family member or friend who is a known terrorist, that should lead to action being taken. And again, that wasn't something that was, quite frankly, being done. I mean, if the folks at home want to think about it this way, everyone's very familiar with public school systems that are failing in actually educating students. And yet, nonetheless, even though students will fail and fail and fail and fail, they'll still get promoted to the next grade, to the next grade, to the next grade. And for the longest time, our immigration system functioned in the same way. Oh, well, you get here. Maybe you're here on a temporary visa, or maybe you're here illegally. And then somehow, magically, depending on the path that you take, you get a green card. And then you fail your way into naturalization. And no one is actually doing the things to make sure that at each step along the way, you're meeting the metrics for success, to be a upstanding American, to be a productive member of the community. And so we are now going to see a lot more of these things over time. Sadly, hopefully we can take the United States government under this president, under this administration, will do everything that it can to stop more of these things from happening, to deport more of these folks who have questionable ties, and to go in and reassess with modern technology all of the existing files and intelligence holdings that we have on these many, many, many people who are in our country currently today.
Gene, last question. I got about 30 seconds here. In the cases that I referenced last week, both were naturalized American citizens. A lot of people have been wondering, well, how come we don't denaturalize people who break our laws? If you come here and then you commit an act of terrorism, or we find that you're connected to terrorism, or in the case of the guy in Virginia, you got convicted of trying to help ISIS, why isn't there an automatic denaturalization? How hard is that to do? Should we be doing more of that?
We should be doing more of it. We need a few statutory fixes from Congress. There's a lot that we can do with our existing tools that we have, but it requires a vetting and a continual assessment of the available information that's there. And quite frankly, we just haven't done that. We haven't focused on that as a country. We haven't devoted the resources necessary to look through all of those files. Hopefully that will start to be done very, very soon.
Yeah, Gene, it sounds like we need to call a few members of Congress about this, because I think the public is ready for somebody to step in here and rectify some situations that are clearly putting American citizens at risk. Gene Hamilton with America First Legal. We'll have you back soon. Thanks for tracking all of this for us. It's Scott Jennings here on Salem. A word from our friends at Relief Factor. Now, look, I don't know a ton about black pepper because I don't use it. But I tell you what I do know about. Black pepper extract. It's not for your food. It's for your Relief Factor. And they've improved the formula by putting black pepper extract in Relief Factor. Do you know what it does? Very important. Helps your body absorb the ingredients even better than before. This is an improved formula. When you take this product, you're going to get even more benefit than you were already, which, by the way, was not insubstantial. We hear from people all over the country who say, Relief Factor has made a difference for me. Now this company, constantly improving, they have put this black pepper extract in Relief Factor, and it's even better than it was before. If you've been listening to me talk about Relief Factor, I tell you, now is your moment. If you're already using it, hey, it's going to work better than ever. Try the 3-week quick start. It's $19.95. You have nothing to lose here. Go to ReliefFactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF. Get rid of the daily aches and pains with Relief Factor. When we come back, some polling I want to talk to you about. Interesting stuff here on the Scott Jennings Show. Stay with us.
Fighting for free speech and Western civilization. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Breaking news into the show. This just in, President Trump making some comments in the Oval Office a little while ago about Operation Epic Fury, our war against Iran. Let's listen to the president in cut 17.
We're not ready to leave yet, but we'll be leaving in the near future. We'll be leaving in pretty much the very near future. But right now they've been decimated from every standpoint. And again, We've had great support from countries in the Middle East, great support, but we've had no support from, essentially, no support from NATO.
The lack of some rhetorical support, but the lack of tangible support from Europe is definitely got the president unhappy. I don't blame him, but certainly the countries in the Middle East are glad that the United States and Israel are finally defanging Iran once and for all. A lot of people have been wondering, how is this affecting the president's political standing, especially in his own party? You probably hear pundits and liberal news hosts opining that this has caused some sort of rift in the MAGA coalition. The president's losing his base. How many times have we played this game? I want you to listen to my friend of the show, CNN polling director Harry Enton, talking about what's going on inside of the MAGA movement, inside the Republican Party, as we're in week 3 of this war. Let's hear Harry in cut 13.
Okay, MAGA GOP on the U.S. military action in Iran. Look at this. Nearly 9 in 10, 89% approve of the U.S. military action in Iran. That is the MAGA GOP base. Just 9% disapprove of it. This is tremendously popular among the Republican base. And, of course, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, overseeing the effort. It seems to me that a lot of people are taking that into account, including President Donald Trump, who has been smiling an awful lot at Marco Rubio lately.
Rubio definitely distinguishing himself here in this effort. But the broader point on politics is clear. If you hear somebody tell you that the Republicans or the MAGA base is abandoning Trump over the war, the polling just doesn't bear it out. It is overwhelming evidence that that is a false talking point designed to make you believe something that is not true. I saw some other polling, by the way, that I wanted to share. I haven't talked polling on the show in a while. You know, a lot of polls come in. I try not to overdwell on this because, you know, polls come and go. Next month we'll have more polls. Then there'll be more polls. You could talk about it forever. But one did catch my eye today. It's called the generic congressional ballot. Now, generic ballot means you do a poll of voters and you say, if the election were held today or in the upcoming midterm election, do you intend to vote for the Republican candidate or the Democrat candidate? It is generically asking people, which party will you vote for? So the most recent YouGov Economist survey taken in the last couple of days, over 1,400 registered voters in the United States, asked this generic ballot question. Democrats got 43%, Republicans got 41%. Now, small lead for Democrats, both parties in the low 40s. Other was 2%, not sure was 11%. What I saw in this poll and what jumped out to me was the trend line. Back on February 16th, a month ago, Democrats in the same survey, same group, had a 7-point lead. On March the 2nd, Democrats had a 4-point lead. On March the 9th, Democrats had a 3-point lead. And on March the 16th, this survey, Democrats have a 2-point lead. So the trend line here is pretty clear that Democrats are receding somewhat over the last 30 days. Incidentally, it's been about 30 days ago they shut down the Department of Homeland Security. It makes me wonder if they're not suffering there a little bit. One other survey that I was sent today, and look, this is not a scientific survey, but I did take note of it. I have a colleague on CNN who hosts a show on the weekends named Michael Smerconish, guy out of Pennsylvania, and he often posts questions for his viewers that they can go on there and vote. Here was the question that he posed. For those who oppose President Trump, which matters more to you? Trump's political defeat or a U.S. victory against Iran? So almost 28,000 people voted in this survey. 72% said Trump's political defeat mattered more to them. Only nearly 28% or so said a U.S. victory against Iran is what mattered the most. That is Trump derangement syndrome on full display. These people watch Michael Smerconish on CNN. They care more about Trump taking an L politically than they care about the United States defeating its adversary, Iran. That is some broken-brained, anti-American politics, if there ever was any. Coming up, the man who will be sitting right here, he's supposed to be here, he's on his way, David Axelrod joins me live and in studio here at Arizona State University. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Don't miss this conversation right after this.
Ready for some common sense and a little Kentucky windage? Here's Scott Jennings.
Okay, Tuesday, March the 17th. It's a little chaotic in the studio right now. David Axelrod is here. People over there. There's people over there. We got a lot going on in here right now. It's great. Live radio and a live guest who we'll get to in just a moment. First, a little breaking news that is related to a guest we had on the show earlier. We talked about Governor Beshear's veto of the tax credit for education that happened. Well, the Kentucky legislature has just overridden the veto, the Kentucky Senate voting 31-5 to override that. And so the way it works in Kentucky now is that it will go to the Secretary of State, who's a Republican named Mike Adams, and he will actually sign that bill into law. So Beshear vetoed it. The Republicans have overrode the veto, and now a Republican Secretary of State will opt Kentucky in to the scholarship program that was the tax credit that was part of the big, beautiful bill. Tuesday, March the 17th. We're here at Arizona State University, and David Axelrod is here.
You know, I noticed that you put me in a chair that's significantly lower than yours. Is that part of the...
Yes. I brought you here specifically to make you uncomfortable, and it starts with your physical being in the studio. No, first of all, I have to say thank you for the invitation to be here at ASU. We're going to talk to some students in a little while, which you teach a class here, and then you're part of the public policy school here.
Well, yeah, I'm a professor of practice. Largely what I do is I bring people like you, and we have conversations that hopefully will be edifying.
Yeah. We'll have
maybe even electrifying.
Well, if anybody gets electrified at this, that would be quite a news story. So thanks for coming by the show. I want to start here. I had Rahm on yesterday.
Yeah.
He did, really interesting guy occupying interesting space in the possible Democratic primary for president. You know him well from Chicago, of course.
I've known him for 40-something years.
He's got a really interesting resume. Ambassador, congressman, mayor.
Chief of staff to one president, counselor to another.
I mean, the guy's been high-level experience
congressional leadership
at every level of government.
Yeah.
What do you make of this? He's carving out, I think, one of the most unique lanes in that potential primary.
Yeah, well, I think, look, he's incredibly smart. He's politically sophisticated, and he's also, as you say, very experienced and thoughtful about issues, and he, I think, recognizes that there is a lane for someone who's offering ideas that are, about how to move the country forward rather than looking backward. And he's getting a lot of uptake, certainly among the sort of opinion elite world. He's getting some big reviews, and honestly, once you make the Scott Jennings Show, that's the traditional launching pad for a Democratic presidential candidate.
I was just going to say, particularly in a Democrat primary, this is a first stop, I would think, for most people.
Yeah. Maybe he's not as smart as I said. I don't know, but I mean, he's going everywhere, and I think it's he is more advanced, I think, in his thinking about the campaign than a lot of people who are aspirants are right now.
I asked him this yesterday, and he spent a fair amount of time pivoting to criticize Netanyahu. But I asked him, I said, can a Jewish guy from Chicago who has had a long-standing view that it's a good thing that we're allied with Israel win a Democratic primary for president, or any other primary for that matter? Now, he pivoted to his long-standing dislike of Netanyahu, which I know you share, but just politically, tactically, what's your view on that?
Look, first of all, there's an argument that a Jewish candidate is in a stronger position to stake out the position that he's staking out, and his position is that Netanyahu is not ultimately good for the long run interests of Israel. I mean, he and I both were and continue to be supporters of a two-state solution, and we were, that was the back and forth between us, President Obama and Netanyahu, back in the day when we were in the White House. But, I think the thing about Rahm is that he is willing to, he made these points. He received a humanitarian award the other week. I don't know if he mentioned this at the Illinois Holocaust Museum, and he made some of the same points he made to you. So I think that in some ways it could be advantageous to be able to be honest, both to Democrats about why this relationship to Israel is important, and to these diehard supporters of Netanyahu, who he believes, I agree with him, are being misled.
Is it really the job, though, of the American president or any American politicians to dictate the internal domestic politics of an ally? I mean, that is the pushback. Whether you love Netanyahu or you don't like him or you think it's time for it, I mean, they're our ally, and the Israeli people, the Israeli political system has produced this leadership structure right now. Is it our job to try to say, no, you have to do this, that, or the other?
Well, the relationship between the U.S. and Israel is a little bit different. I mean, the level of support that the United States gives and has from the beginning is a special relationship. Everybody always refers to it as a special relationship, and you know, I mean, we live in a time where the current president you are close to, friendly with, is endorsing candidates in elections. So I think that people will look to our leaders as to, well, what is your policy relative to Israel? What is the advice that you would give Israel? And Ram really has a deep base of knowledge about the history of that, of not just Israel, but the conflict.
He's not really, I don't think, a household name among most voters. There are a couple of people who are growing in knowledge. Gavin Newsom of California is one. Kamala Harris, floating around out there, obviously, is widely known. Maybe Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who some people want to run. Would you consider those three people to be the at least nominal front runners for Democrats in 28, or too soon to even sort of talk about it?
Look, I think people will talk about it because that's an obsession, you know, but I think the most disadvantageous in some ways thing to be is the front runner, you know, 2.5 years before an election, because I think things change. I mean, I think Gavin Newsom, and I've said it many times, he's a very talented guy. I think he won the presidential primary of 2025 because I think people were so hungry for someone to punch back and to you know, meet Trump troll to troll and so on. And Newsom has done that, and he's aroused some support in the party because of it. And on the redistricting, I think he's scored a lot of points. But the question is, what are people going to be looking for in 2028? And I suspect people are going to be looking for what comes next. I don't think they're going to want, you know, the most pugilistic person to take on Trump, because Trump will be on his way out. So I'm spending a lot of time, Scott, thinking right now about what is the market going to be looking for. And my theory of presidential politics has always been, informed my advice to Obama. People never choose the replica of what they have. Even if that person is popular, they choose the remedy to the things they think the current president lacks. And so to be like Trump in many ways, or to try and be like Trump, that's not advantageous. I think people are going to be looking for other qualities that they don't believe he has.
That voice you're hearing, David Axelrod, counselor to and a political advisor to former President Obama, a professor of practice here at Arizona State University, my colleague at CNN. We spend a lot of time, David, on and off the air talking about the state of our politics. You're kind of giving me a view of what's happening in the Democratic Party heading into 28. You know, it's interesting on the Republican side. Trump, as you mentioned, on his way out. Everybody assumes J.D. Vance will be the nominee, although lately President Trump seems to talk glowingly about Marco Rubio in public. I see a brewing, you know, grassroots likes Vance, the donors like Rubio. You know, Rubio is a pretty prominent guy in the administration. As a Democrat strategist, you're watching all this. How does it look to you?
Well, you know, this is such an interesting time to ask that question. And I want to add parenthetically, among the things you said about me, I'm the founding director of the University of Chicago's Institute of Politics, so I don't want them to feel,
of course,
no love here. But this is an interesting time to ask that question, because I think this war is a complicated issue as it relates to the presidential race of 2028 on the Republican side. J.D. Vance was probably more outspoken than most in staking out the kind of Tucker Carlson non-interventionist, no forever wars, no foreign intervention, and he's been pretty muted in this period. Rubio is the point man on a lot of this. And, Marco Rubio is both the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor. The last person to have both those positions was Henry Kissinger, which means he's around the president all the time. So how this goes may influence how that race goes, both for Vance and for Rubio. If it's judged a success and we get out with not too much more damage and oil prices snap back and the Middle East is, at peace and the Iranians have turned the page and so on, that's one thing. If it's a little messier, it could be messier for Rubio.
Yeah, he's, I think point man is the right word. I mean, he was in the Oval Office today making some comments, also making some comments about Cuba, which we haven't been talking a lot about because we had Venezuela and then almost immediately Iran. But the Cuba situation, they've got electrical grid issues, people in the streets. The president and his people seem to think something's about to happen there. It doesn't feel like we're going to have to intervene militarily either. What's your gut tell you?
Well, look, they have been, reliant for forever on the Russians, first the Soviets and the Russians, and on Venezuela. And when after Maduro left, they lost an ally there, and obviously there's an understanding between the remaining regime and the U.S. as to providing oil for Cuba. And it's this is a huge pinch that they're feeling, and it's beginning to really crumble. And my guess is that they will seek to strike some sort of deal or arrangement. The tricky thing, and Rubio certainly understands this better than anyone, is if people feel that you've abandoned the idea of a free and democratic Cuba and that elements of the regime remain, I don't think they're going to be as happy as perhaps they were about what happened in Venezuela. And so I'm sure they're trying to calculate all of that.
That voice you're hearing, David Axelrod, special guest, in-person conversation on the Scott Jennings Show today. More with David in just a moment. We'll talk about the media business when we come back. Quick word from our friends at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. We've talked about it many times on this show. We have missiles raining in the Holy Land. People are in bomb shelters. People are being injured. The IFCJ, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, they're the ones who are preparing large-scale distributions of life-saving food, first aid, and emergency essentials for all of these shelters and the security personnel who are helping people there. If you want to stand with the people of Israel right now, my advice, go to supportifcj.org, supportifcj.org. You can get involved in supporting the people in the Holy Land who are certainly vulnerable. You have the sick, the elderly, children, and families. They depend on the IFCJ, and therefore they depend on you. More with David Axelrod when we come back. We're live on the campus of Arizona State University. I'm Scott Jennings. It's Common Sense for the American people. We'll have more right after this.
Conversations and stories you simply won't hear from the mainstream media. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
And it's Tuesday, March 17th, home stretch on the Scott Jennings Show. In-person guest, David Axelrod. We're here in Tempe, Arizona, on campus at Arizona State University. We'll talk with students and folks in the campus community here tonight. Actually, we had about 5 minutes here in our conversation. I wanted to shift gears to the job that we do together, which is we work for CNN. So we've been part of the media landscape together for nearly 10 years now. But times are changing, and how people are consuming political news and news in general, and you've been through it all. You were a reporter earlier in your career.
I used to work for something called a newspaper where they actually printed the news on paper and distributed it.
Well, we'll get into the Encyclopedias Britannicas here to study about that. Obviously we're in a little bit of leadership flux or ownership flux, I'd say, at CNN. But just generally, you've lived through this for a few decades now. What's your sort of outlook on the media business right now? How people are consuming information? What are your sort of gut feelings on it?
Look, I was just having this discussion with a parent of young people who said, hey, we don't we don't want. It was actually Amy Walter has a son, 19 years old. She was on my podcast this morning. She said, "My kids, they don't watch news. The news they get is from YouTube and other places. So there's so many outlets that it's hard to know what the impact of all of these changes are." I do worry, Scott. I am concerned about government. And I know you probably are too, trying to put a thumb on the scale about how things are covered. Every president who has ever lived, including the one you work for, George W. Bush, and the one I work for, Barack Obama, was unhappy about coverage at some point or another. It is endemic to the presidency. But most of them did not feel like that they should use their leverage to try and influence coverage. I think that's a frightening thing from a First Amendment standpoint. I was glad to see Ron Johnson and some others speaking out about that. It's something I think that should unite people across the spectrum. But the real question is, how will people get their news in the future? And are we going to be so atomized that we only get news from news sources that tell us, that affirm our points of view, even if they don't always inform our points of view? And does that dig us deeper into the silos in which we're living? That concerns me.
Oh, I'm with you. The algorithms, I think, drive us into these bubbles.
Yes.
And I've certainly gone on set at CNN and have seen videos or news articles or information that the rest of the panelists haven't seen, and vice versa. And it does make you wonder. I have the diet that I'm being fed. You have the diet that you're being fed. But I say this to audiences sometimes.
We can all overeat.
Yeah, well, and it's sometimes hard to have a shared national purpose when you don't have a shared reality. I mean, back to your newspaper point, we're not all walking out on the same front porch, grabbing the same newspaper, looking at the same front page, and then discussing. We're getting very different angles. Even if those angles are not inaccurate, it's just different points of view. Now, some of it is inaccurate. I also worry about the AI piece of it, but
these algorithms are really they're driving us there. They don't have a political point of view, but they know what yours is, and they drive you into the ones that respond to yours. And and they exclude the ones that don't. And it's dangerous. And there is misinformation that helps drive some of this. And you and I are, I don't want to destroy, you're doing so well here, I don't want to destroy your.
We're doing great.
We're friends. We're really good friends.
We are.
People, Democrats say, how can you be friends with that Scott Jennings? Occasionally I say, Jesus, I don't know. But I explain that we know each other.
Yeah.
We know each other as human beings. We know each other as people. We know each other's family stories and so on. Yeah. We've got to fight to reclaim that. We have to find our common humanity, because the profit motive of these social media platforms is not that. It's to keep us online, and they think these divisions are what does it, and they think micro-targeting us is their play, and that's what algorithms do. So I'm very anti-algorithm in that regard.
We're going to have a great conversation about this and other issues tonight here on campus, and then we're going to further deepen our friendship tonight at a baseball game. We're going to do what's good for the soul.
Best place to do it, yes.
It's going to be
best place to have a good conversation.
You got that. America's pastime. We'll catch a little spring training tonight out here in Arizona. I want to thank you all for listening today. David, Axe, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for having me to campus. We'll be back on this campus again tomorrow. One more Arizona show before heading back east. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. See you then.